Birmingham, England. It was supposed to be just another early round match on the grass court calendar, but from the moment the gates opened that morning, something felt different. Security around the Edgbaston Priory Club was noticeably tighter than usual. Staff members were being repositioned, certain sections of seating had been quietly reserved, and even the most experienced tournament officials seemed reluctant to answer questions from journalists who had begun sensing that something unusual was unfolding behind the scenes. By mid-morning, rumors started circulating throughout the venue. A royal guest was expected not for a ceremonial appearance or a staged photo opportunity, but for a private visit. Inside the stadium, whispers spread from row to row as spectators exchanged curious glances. One name kept surfacing in hushed conversations: Prince William. At first, it sounded like nothing more than speculation. After all, members of the royal family occasionally attend major sporting events, particularly in London, but matches at the Birmingham Open rarely attract that level of attention. Yet, as the morning progressed, the signs became increasingly difficult to ignore. Additional security personnel appeared around the VIP section, access to several entrances were quietly restricted, and an internal alert circulated among staff advising them of the presence of a high-profile dignitary. By the time the players stepped onto the court for their warm-ups, the atmosphere around the venue had noticeably changed. Then came the moment that confirmed the rumors. A black motorcade arrived at the venue entrance without fanfare. There were no flashing sirens, no public announcements, and no media spectacle, just a carefully coordinated arrival. One of the vehicles pulled up to a private entrance behind the main court complex, and moments later, a small group emerged. Walking calmly among them, dressed in a dark tailored suit and carrying himself with quiet confidence, was Prince William. There was no formal introduction and no attempt to draw attention to his presence. He simply arrived, took his place, and allowed the event to unfold naturally. Inside Court 1, however, the focus remained on the tennis. Alex Eala continued her warm-up routine with complete concentration, bouncing lightly on her toes, rotating her shoulders, and fine-tuning her timing from the baseline. Her expression revealed no sign of distraction or awareness of the growing excitement around the venue. For her, it was still just another match, an opportunity to compete, perform, and focus on the task at hand. Nothing more, nothing less. But around her, the energy inside the stadium was beginning to change. Spectators in the stands started glancing toward the VIP section, pointing discreetly as word spread that Prince William had taken his seat. There was no grand entrance and no dramatic announcement. He simply acknowledged a few officials with a polite nod before settling in quietly to watch the match. Yet his presence did not go unnoticed. Television cameras picked it up almost immediately, and within minutes social media was buzzing with questions. Why was he here? Why had he chosen this particular match? And perhaps the question generating the most curiosity of all: why Alex Eala? After all, this was not centre court at Wimbledon. It was Birmingham, a respected but smaller tournament that typically unfolds away from the brightest global spotlight. At least, that was true on paper. The arrival of a royal guest changed the perception of the event instantly. Suddenly, every point seemed to carry extra weight, every rally felt more significant, and every moment on court appeared to be unfolding under a far brighter spotlight than anyone had expected. For Alex Eala, who was unknowingly stepping into one of the most closely watched matches of her young career, the story was no longer just about tennis. It had become a story about attention, expectation, and the growing sense that something bigger than a routine first-round encounter was taking shape. From the opening game, the match carried a different rhythm. There was no rush, no reckless aggression from Alex. Instead, she approached the contest with patience and composure, carefully feeling her way into the match and trusting the game plan that had brought her success before. While the crowd's attention was fixed on the unusual circumstances surrounding the event, Alex remained focused on the court, determined to let her tennis do the talking. Alex Eala did not begin the match with reckless aggression. Instead, she approached it with remarkable precision, carefully measuring distances, testing angles, and studying her opponent's timing as though she were processing information in real time. Her movement on the grass looked unusually natural for a player still developing. Experiential the surface. There was no sense of urgency in her game, no unnecessary risks, and no forced winners. She was methodical, constructing points patiently and waiting for the smallest opportunity to emerge before accelerating with sudden purpose. And when those opportunities appeared, she rarely let them slip away. Early in the first set, one rally in particular seemed to alter the mood inside the stadium. It began with a deep defensive return driven into the corner, followed by a scrambling recovery shot that barely cleared the net. Just when it appeared the point might turn against her, Alex shifted gears. She moved forward decisively, seized control of the exchange, and fired a clean forehand winner down the line. The crowd responded immediately with a burst of applause, recognizing both the athleticism and composure required to finish the point. Yet the reaction that drew the most attention came from the VIP section. Prince William, who had been quietly observing the match, leaned slightly forward in his seat. It was not a dramatic gesture, nor an exaggerated display of excitement, but it was noticeable. His hands remained clasped as his eyes stayed fixed on the court, following every movement and every exchange with genuine interest. He appeared fully engaged, watching the contest unfold point by point as if he were following a compelling story in real time. At that moment, it became clear that this was no longer casual viewing. The presence of that level of attention transformed the atmosphere around the match. The crowd could sense it, the cameras captured it, and the energy around the court continued to build. In sports, attention has a way of changing everything, and on this day, every point Alex Eala played seemed to carry a little more significance than the one before. As the match progressed, Alex Eala's confidence became increasingly evident. Her second serve grew more precise, allowing her to take greater control of points from the very beginning. On returns, she began positioning herself closer to the baseline, signaling both confidence and intent. Meanwhile, her backhand started producing deeper, heavier shots that consistently pushed her opponent farther behind the court, disrupting rhythm and limiting opportunities to attack. What had begun as a competitive contest evolved into a fascinating tactical battle, with every game carrying significance. Each service hold felt hard-earned, and every breakpoint seemed to draw the crowd further into the drama unfolding on court. Then came the moment that changed the entire atmosphere of the match. With the score locked at 4-4 in the second set, the players found themselves engaged in a grueling rally that stretched beyond 20 shots. Both competitors were pushed to their physical limits. Time and again, Alex was forced into defensive positions, yet she refused to surrender the point. She tracked down 3 aggressive finishing attempts from her opponent, sliding across the grass, regaining her balance, and resetting her position with remarkable composure after each recovery. As the rally continued, spectators gradually rose from their seats, sensing they were witnessing something special. The anticipation inside the stadium became almost tangible. Then, in an instant, everything changed. After patiently absorbing pressure, Alex spotted an opening. She unleashed a sharp cross-court forehand that pulled her opponent wide. Immediately sprinted toward the net and finished the point with a delicate volley that clipped the line and dropped safely inside the court. The reaction was instantaneous. The stadium erupted in applause and cheers, rewarding both the quality of the rally and the courage of the finish. This time, however, the television cameras did not focus solely on the celebrating crowd. They quickly turned toward the royal box. There, Prince William responded with a simple nod. It was subtle, controlled, and entirely understated, yet there was no mistaking its meaning. It was a gesture of genuine appreciation for what he had just witnessed. No words were necessary. Sometimes the strongest form of recognition comes in silence. And in that brief moment, the significance of the point seemed to resonate far beyond the boundaries of the court. And in that moment, Alex Eala was no longer simply a promising young player navigating the early stages of her professional journey. She had become the focal point of the entire stadium, commanding the attention of everyone watching, from the spectators packed into the stands to the distinguished guests seated in the VIP section. The match itself had evolved beyond a routine tournament contest. It was becoming one of those occasions that people would remember long after the final point had been played. Match point arrived without fanfare. There was no dramatic interruption, no extended pause, and no attempt to manufacture suspense. There was only tennis. Alex walked calmly behind the baseline and bounced the ball twice, maintaining the same composed routine she had followed throughout the match. Around her, the stadium had fallen into an unusual silence. The conversations had stopped. The movement in the stands had slowed. It felt as though everyone present sensed that a defining moment was approaching. She delivered her first serve wide. Her opponent managed to get the return back into play, but it landed short, leaving a brief opening. For a player with Alex's instincts and confidence, that was all the invitation she needed. She stepped forward decisively, planted her feet, and unleashed a clean forehand down the line. The ball raced past her opponent and landed perfectly inside the court for a winner. For a fraction of a second, the stadium remained silent. It was as if the crowd needed a moment to process what had just happened. The point had ended so cleanly and so decisively that the reality of the victory seemed to hang in the air before the reaction finally arrived. Then the stadium erupted. The roar inside Edgbaston Priory Club was immediate and overwhelming, washing across the venue in a wave of excitement and appreciation. Fifth jumped to their feet, applause quickly transformed into thunderous cheers, and cameras instantly focused on Alex Eala as she stood near the baseline, breathing heavily after the final point. For a moment, she simply absorbed the atmosphere around her. Then she raised her racket slightly, a small, controlled gesture that carried far more meaning than any elaborate celebration could have. It was respectful, composed, and perfectly in character, because this was not merely a victory. It was a performance that had captured the attention of everyone watching. High above the court in the VIP section, Prince William joined the applause. It was not the polite acknowledgement often given at the conclusion of a sporting event. It appeared to be genuine appreciation for the quality of tennis he had just witnessed. As the crowd continued to celebrate, he remained in his seat longer than many expected, watching as Alex made her way toward her bench and eventually toward the tunnel. There was a sense that he was still reflecting on what had unfolded before him, the level of play, the composure under pressure, and the maturity displayed by a young player on an increasingly significant stage. Observers near the VIP area would later describe his reaction as one of quiet admiration. They noted that he exchanged a few brief comments with tournament officials, but continued glancing back toward the court, even after many of the other distinguished guests had begun to leave. It was a subtle detail, yet one that stood out to those who noticed it. The match had clearly left an impression. Because what Prince William, and everyone else inside the stadium, had witnessed was about more than a single result in the tournament draw. It was the performance of a player growing into the spotlight, demonstrating not only talent but poise, intelligence, and confidence under pressure. On a day that began as an ordinary early-round match, Alex Eala had delivered the kind of display that transforms attention into belief and turns a routine victory into a memorable moment. It was more than a victory, it was a statement. And as Alex Eala walked off the court that afternoon, there was something noticeably different about her demeanor. She did not appear overwhelmed by the attention, nor did she seem surprised by the moment. Instead, she looked composed and fully aware of what had just unfolded around her. There was a sense that she understood her place in the sport was beginning to change. Matches like this were no longer simply entries in a tournament draw or additions to a win-loss record. They were becoming performances that would be watched, discussed, documented, and remembered. In rare circumstances, they would even attract attention from the highest levels of public life. As she disappeared down the tunnel in Birmingham, one impression remained unmistakable. Alex Eala was no longer just competing in tennis matches. She was becoming a player capable of generating anticipation, curiosity, and conversation far beyond the boundaries of the sport itself. Her presence was beginning to carry a weight that extended beyond rankings, statistics, and tournament results. What happened in Birmingham was not merely another win on the schedule. It was another reminder of how rapidly Alex's profile within the sport continues to grow.